The honest answer is nobody knows. That's the simplest and most frustrating truth. For more than 30 years, the most valuable stolen art in the world has remained completely hidden. 13 masterpieces worth at least $500 million vanished from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston one night in 1990. And since then, there has been nothing. No ransom notes, no credible sighting, no deathbed confessions that led to a discovery. Just silence. The empty frames still hang on the walls of the museum. They are a constant, quiet reminder of what was lost. They are a statement from the museum. These places are not being filled. They are waiting for the art to come home. But will it ever? To understand why this mystery is so hard to solve, you have to go back to the night it all happened. It was St. Patrick's Day weekend in Boston, 1990. The city was full of celebrations. The Gardner Museum, a beautiful Venetian-style palace packed with priceless art, was closed for the night. 2 young security guards were on duty. One was Rick Abath, a 23-year-old who sometimes showed up to work high. He was in a rock band. This wasn't his career, it was just a job. The other guard was a rookie. It was one of his first overnight shifts. Just after 1 a.m. on March 18th, a buzzer rang at the side entrance. The guards saw 2 men on the security camera. They were dressed as Boston police officers. They had hats and fake mustaches. They told the guards they were responding to a disturbance call. This was the first mistake. A big one. Museum policy was clear. You don't let anyone in, not even police, without first calling for verification. But Abath buzzed them in. The 2 fake cops entered the museum. They told Abath he looked familiar, that there might be a warrant out for his arrest. They asked him to step away from the security desk. This was the second mistake. He left the only panic button in the building. The thieves had them. They put handcuffs on Abath and the other guard. They told them, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery." They wrapped duct tape around the guards' heads and eyes. They took them down to the basement and chained them to pipes far apart from each other. The guards were terrified, but they were not hurt. Now, the thieves had the museum to themselves. And they had a lot of time. They were inside for 81 minutes. That's a very long time for a heist. It suggests they were calm, not rushed. But what they did next has confused investigators for decades. They didn't seem to be art experts. They went to the Dutch room. This is where they scored their biggest prizes. They took Rembrandt's only seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. It's a dramatic, powerful painting. They also took his A Lady and Gentleman in Black. And then, the most valuable piece of all Vermeer's, The Concert. There are only about 35 known Vermeer paintings in the world. This one was considered his finest. It's a quiet, beautiful scene of 3 musicians. It's irreplaceable. But the way they took the paintings was brutal. They didn't carefully remove them, they smashed the frames and cut the canvases right out with a blade. This is something a real art professional would never do. It damages the art. It's clumsy. They also stole a small Rembrandt self-portrait etching about the size of a postage stamp. They took 5 sketches by Edgar Degas. They took a Govert Flinck landscape. In another gallery, they took Shed Tortoni, a famous painting by Edouard Manet. It was on an easel, easy to grab. They also took an ancient Chinese bronze beaker, or a gu, from the Shang dynasty. And to top it off, they unscrewed a bronze eagle finial from the top of a Napoleonic flag. What they left behind is just as confusing. They tried to take the large Napoleonic flag itself, but they seemed to give up. They walked right past Titian's, Raphael's, and Michelangelo's. These are some of the most famous and valuable works in the museum. They ignored them completely. It was as if they had a shopping list, but it was a strange one. It made no sense. After 81 minutes, they packed the art into their car and drove away. The guards were found the next morning when the new shift arrived. The police were called. The FBI arrived. The biggest art heist in modern history had just happened, and the hunt had begun. The initial investigation was a mess. The crime scene was contaminated. The guards were immediate suspects. Rick Abath, in particular, was under a lot of suspicion. Motion sensor data showed that the side door had been opened briefly a few hours before the heist. Abath claimed he was just doing his rounds. But the FBI wondered if he was doing a dry run or letting someone in to case the museum. He failed a polygraph test, but there was never any hard evidence linking him or the other guard to the crime. They were just 2 young guys who broke protocol and got overpowered, nothing more. So, the FBI turned its attention to the Boston underworld. This was the most logical place to look. A crime of this scale, they figured, had to be the work of organized crime. Boston in the 1990s was a hotbed of mafia activity. The prevailing theory, one that has lasted for 30 years, is that the art wasn't stolen for a specific buyer. It wasn't for some Dr. No-style villain who wanted to admire it in a secret lair. It was stolen to be a bargaining chip. It was a get-out-of-jail-free card. The idea was simple. A mobster gets arrested, he faces a long prison sentence. He tells the feds, I can get you the Gardner art back, let's make a deal. It was a powerful piece of leverage. This theory made sense, it explained why the art never appeared on the black market. You can't sell a famous Vermeer. Everyone would know it was stolen, but you could use it to trade for your freedom. The investigation began to focus on a specific crew of mobsters connected to the Patriarcha crime family. This is where the story gets populated with a cast of aging small-time criminals. None of them were masterminds, they were just tough guys from Dorchester and Revere. One of the first big names to surface was Carmelo Merlino. He was a track-affiliated mobster who ran an auto body shop in Dorchester. The FBI believed his shop was a hub for criminal activity. In the late 1990s, years after the heist, Merlino and some associates were planning to rob an armored car depot. The FBI was onto them. An informant recorded their conversations. During one of these talks, the informant brought up the Gardner art. Merlino claimed he could get it back. He said he knew who did it, he wanted the reward money, which was then $5 million. He allegedly told the informant that he would have one of his guys, David Turner, help get the art. This was a huge break. The FBI set up a sting. They arrested Merlino and his crew before the armored car robbery could happen. The hope was that Merlino, facing a long sentence, would give up the art to cut a deal. Though he never did. He went to prison and died there in 2005, taking whatever he knew with him. But he left a trail of names. David Turner was one. Another was George Reisfelder. The FBI now believes it's highly likely that Turner and Reisfelder were the two men who walked into the museum dressed as cops. They fit the general physical descriptions. They were known criminals. They had the connections. But by the time the FBI zeroed in on them, it was too late. George Reisfelder had died of a drug overdose in 1991, just a year after the heist. David Turner was arrested for other crimes and died in prison in 2011. The two likely thieves were dead. Another name that came up was Robert "Bobby" Donati. He was a local mob associate. He was known to be ambitious and maybe a little reckless. In 1991, a year after the robbery, Donati was brutally murdered. He was found in the trunk of a Cadillac, his body riddled with bullets. His death was part of a bloody internal mafia war. A credible source, a friend of Donati's, later told investigators that Donati had been involved in the Gardner heist. The story was that Donati had the art and was planning to use it to get his boss out of jail. But when his boss was killed in the mob war, Donati was suddenly in a dangerous position. He had this incredibly valuable and very hot stolen property, and then he was killed. Did the art pass to someone else after he died? It's a compelling theory. It would mean the art was passed from one criminal to another, a hot potato nobody knew what to do with. Then there's Miles Connor, Jr. He's a character straight out of a movie, a brilliant rock and roll singing art thief. He was a legend in the art crime world. He had a history of stealing valuable art and then using it to negotiate his way out of trouble. IMC. In the 1970s, he stole a Rembrandt from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. He later arranged for its return in exchange for a lighter sentence. He was the master of the get-out-of-jail-free card strategy. When the Gardner heist happened, Miles Connor was in prison, so he couldn't have done it himself, but he told the FBI he knew who did. He claimed his old partner, Bobby Donati, was involved. He said Donati had visited him in prison before the heist and they talked about how to rob the Gardner. Connor gave him tips. He claimed that after the robbery, the art was moved to a location he knew. But after Donati was killed, the trail went cold for him too. Was he telling the truth? Or was he just trying to play his old game, trading information for freedom? It's hard to say. Connor has always been a master manipulator. For years, the investigation seemed stuck on these old names and dead ends. The trail was getting colder and colder. Then, in the 2010s, a new prime suspect emerged. His name was Robert Gentile, but everyone called him Bobby. He was an elderly, unassuming mobster from Connecticut. He looked more like a retired grandfather than a key figure in the biggest art heist in history. The FBI became convinced that Gentile had the paintings, or at least knew where they were. Their information came from a source connected to Robert Guarente, another dead mobster. Guarente's widow told the FBI that her husband had been given at least 2 of the paintings after the heist. She said that before he died in 2004, he passed them on to Robert Gentile. She even claimed she saw Gentile with one of the paintings. This was a massive leap. The FBI went after Gentile hard. They searched his house in Manchester, Connecticut multiple times. They tore it apart, they found guns, cash, and a list of the stolen Gardner art with their estimated black market values. But they didn't find the paintings. They found an empty ditch in his backyard, where it looked like something large had once been buried. The feds put Gentile in jail on unrelated gun charges, hoping the pressure would make him talk. He was old and in poor health. They offered him deals. They offered him money. They offered him freedom. He insisted he knew nothing. He told them, "I don't have them. I wish I did. I'd be a rich man." The FBI even had him take a polygraph test. He was asked if he knew where the paintings were. He said no. The test indicated he was telling the truth, but when they asked if he knew anything at all about the paintings, the results were inconclusive. The Gentile became this frustrating, tragicomic figure. He was this ailing old man, shuffling in and out of court, while the FBI was convinced he held the key to a $500 million secret. He died in 2021. If he knew anything, he took it to his grave. Just like Merlino, Riesfelder, Turner, and Donati. The list of dead suspects just kept growing, so where does that leave us today? Where is the art? There are a few major theories. The first, and most heartbreaking, is that the art was destroyed. The thieves were not sophisticated art lovers. They were common criminals. The paintings were cut from their frames. They might have been rolled up, stored improperly, and damaged beyond repair by mold or moisture. Or maybe the thieves got scared. The publicity around the heist was enormous. The art was too famous to sell. It became a liability. In a moment of panic, they might have just burned it or dumped it in the ocean. This is the great fear of everyone involved in the search. The second theory, and the one the FBI still holds on to, is that the art is still out there, hidden somewhere. It could be in a dusty attic in South Boston, or behind a wall in a house in Connecticut, or in a storage locker in Philadelphia, a city that had some loose connections to the original suspect. The theory goes that the paintings were passed down through criminal networks. The person who has them now might not even fully understand what they are. They might have inherited a couple of old, rolled-up canvases from an uncle or a grandfather. They might be afraid to come forward. This is the most hopeful scenario. It means the art is still recoverable. A third theory is the one you see in movies, the eccentric billionaire collector. The idea that someone paid for the art to be stolen so they could hang it in a secret private gallery. Most experts find this unlikely. The risk is too high. The circle of people who would know about it would be too large to keep it a secret for over 30 years. The word would have gotten out. It makes for a good story, but it probably isn't the reality. A fourth theory is that the art was moved overseas. Early on, there were rumors of a connection to the IRA. The idea was that the art was smuggled to Ireland to be used to buy weapons. There's never been any solid evidence to support this, but it's possible the art left the country, which would make it infinitely harder to track. It could be anywhere in the world. The hunt continues. The FBI has an agent dedicated full-time to the Gardner case. The museum is still offering a $10 million reward for information leading directly to the recovery of the art in good condition. They have promised immunity from prosecution. They have made it clear they don't care who did it. They just want the art back. You can call a tip line. You can send an email. The channels are all there, waiting for the one piece of information that could break the case open. Every few years, a new lead pops up. A Dutch art detective claims he has a news source. A former gangster gives a cryptic interview. A new book or podcast reunites public interest. But so far, they have all been dead ends. The story is so compelling because it's about so much more than just stolen property. It's about a hole in our culture. Rembrandt's only seascape is gone. We can look at pictures of it, but we can't stand in front of it and feel its power. The quiet intimacy of Vermeer's The Concert exists now only in reproductions. A piece of our shared history was ripped out, and we can't get it back. The men who likely did it are dead. The men who likely arranged it are dead. The men who may have possessed it later on are dead. The trail is littered with the ghosts of small-time mobsters who thought they had the ultimate bargaining chip, but it never saved any of them. It only brought them more trouble. So where are the paintings today? Maybe they are sitting in a climate-controlled vault in a foreign country. Maybe they are rotting in a plastic tube in a damp basement somewhere in New England. Maybe they were turned to ash decades ago. The only honest answer is we don't know. The empty frames at the Gardner Museum are a kind of memorial. They mark the spot where something beautiful used to be. They are a question mark hanging on the wall, and they will likely stay there, a silent testament to the greatest art mystery of our time, waiting for an answer that may never come. The 30-year hunt has produced theories, suspects, and stories, but it has not produced a single piece of art. And with every year that passes, the hope of seeing them again gets a little bit smaller. The silence just gets a little bit louder.